Welcome to Artists in Residences, the Westport Library's virtual artist series. I'm Carol Erger-Fass, exhibit curator at the library. Today, Miggs Burroughs takes us to the studio of photographer Tom Kretsch. Tom's a self-taught photographer who's traveled to places near and far in search of peaceful places, those special spots where he can capture visual images that evoke a soothing and calming moment. Sometimes he finds that in a colorful building, or a quiet beach, or maybe an old front porch. Tom uses light, texture, form, and color to capture the kind of moments that can lend a peaceful and serene aura to his photographs. His motto of less is more helps guide his vision and results in graphically stunning photographs, which people sometimes mistake for paintings. He's traveled to many magical places over the years, including Tuscany, Spain, Mexico, Maine, and Canada. But he says that there are plenty of peaceful places worthy of his attention near home, right in Westport. Having access to such beauty every day has helped him control some of the variables in the environment. So when an early morning fog or late winter sun occurs, it might motivate him to go and capture that moment. So now let's join Miggs with Tom in his Westport studio, and he can share with us how he makes it all happen.
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you to the Westport Library for this exciting, entertaining series. It allows me to barge into studios and cross-examine artists and photographers about their process and their workspace. So I'm pleased because Tom Kretsch is a friend, was a neighbor, is a friend, and a well-known photographer in the area. And he's come out with a new book called Touching Maine, which we'll talk about. But Tom, why don't you, we'll start off, you just tell us a little bit about how you weren't born a photographer. You had a long career path, maybe just a brief little bio of what you did in your previous life.
Okay, thanks, Miggs, and I thank you both of you for having me here on this interview. It's really exciting to have you at my studio. I'm going to start in a little different way, sorry, but I'm going to hold up this little etching. Maybe Miggs, you recognize this.
Yes, my father. But, I think that's my father.
Yeah, this was an etching that your dad did of Albert Einstein, and he gave it to Sandy and I at one time, and we've always cherished it. I have it hanging in my studio actually, and it kind of reminds me of my dad. My dad looked a little bit like Einstein, a physicist as well, not the same caliber as Einstein, but at any rate. And as you introduced me, you did, yes, we were neighbors, although you had moved out by the time Sandy and I bought a house on Wakeman Place in 1974. And your parents, Bernie and Esther, were just wonderful friends of ours for so many years. And they introduced me to Bernie Fuchs, the fine illustrator, and I was very inspired by his work. And they were just great people, and our houses were built by the same builder. And so we have a lot of connections with the Burroughs.
Oh, thank you.
But anyway, yeah. But in relation to me, yes, I was a school teacher for many years. I taught in all public schools for 37 years. I taught elementary physical education, which is, I guess, a long ways from photography. But I always loved photography, and I actually did a lot of photography at my school. I did these slideshows every year about all the events that took place in the school, and then this was back in the Kodachrome days before digital work. And then I had this little sound dissolver that I would dissolve the pictures from one to the other. And I did these great presentations every year at the end of the year for the kids and for the parents, and put music to it. And they really loved it. But I started my own interest in photography and during that time, and I always loved looking at some of the masters of photography, the Edward Westons and the Ansel Adams and Eugene Smith. And I was always inspired by their work. And my mother was actually a very good photographer too. And so maybe it was in the genes a little bit. And I just got interested in pursuing it at a different level than taking just snapshots. And I guess that's how it all began with me.
Yeah, and we should say your website is peacefulplacesphotography.com, correct?
Yeah, it's called, peacefulplacesphoto.com.
I'm sorry, Peaceful Places Photo, and which is kind of your signature approach. These beautiful, iconic, serene, some are very abstract in a way, but there's a lot of serenity. You capture the serenity of kind of everyday, what you might say, everyday places that we might all pass by and never take a second look. And what is about that draws you?
Yeah, I came upon this idea of peaceful places as my kind of mantra for my photography. I guess I was inspired by photographers that kind of look for that essence in their work. And I kind of developed these mantras for my own photography, one being that less is more in a photograph. And I tried to keep that concept going a lot in when I was shooting my pictures. And I was also always trying to take this concept of chasing the light, if you will, and always trying to find the right light to photograph. I think when we were all growing up with Kodak cameras, and they always said, oh, go out when the sun is bright and the sunshine and take your pictures. That works for certain things, but for an artist to turn something into a piece of art, you do need the right light. And of course, the right light is always when it's softest, and that's in the early parts of the day and in the early evening. And I'm not really talking about sunsets necessarily and sunrises, but just the soft glow of light.
How about, do you have a picture handy you could show us that might illustrate what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think this is a recent piece that I did. I have this love of barns, and there's a lot of beautiful barns in Connecticut. And I sort of entitled the series "The Poetry of Barns." But when I'm driving around looking for some of these barns, I'm always trying to find ones that exude that kind of look, that idea that less is more. That I try to get some of the other things out of the image, and it just focuses on just the barn. And I think the use of a lot of negative space also helps to really refine and make the statement that I'm trying to make. And this is, I guess, an example. And when I talked about light before, I said how I really people sometimes think of light, and I think they think of sunlight and bright light. And of course, I enjoy fog and gray days, and I think colors are sometimes more saturated during that time.
So you just throw out the Kodak handbook, right? You just
yeah, I wrote my own.
So I'm curious about composition too. I've heard different photographers talk of different ways they do it. Some are very, I don't know if it means they're a purist, but they said, I only compose in the camera. Whatever I get in the camera, that's what I use. I don't crop. I crop in the camera. And I, it's part of the art form is cropping and making a composition. So which way, or what does your eye fall in that?
Yeah, I mean, and I guess in a perfect world, I think another great skill that an artist needs is that of visualization. And when I drive around and I see things, in my mind, I'm visualizing how I want that to look on my final production. And sometimes, you can get it that way exactly, but there are times when you do have to crop things. And sometimes, I guess the beauty of Photoshop, you can eliminate some things that perhaps you didn't want in that picture, obviously, like a wire coming across or a sign that might be there that you couldn't avoid in taking it. But
Sure.
I think the visualization, happens beforehand, but sometimes it needs to be completed in the dark room, and the dark room being the Photoshop.
Digital darkroom, yeah, it's all changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, can we see some more images or whatever you?
Sure.
Yeah, what in your book, and it doesn't have to apply to, I think it applies to everything you do. You talk about the soul and spirituality of a place, and just wondering if you could expound on that.
This isn't actually a picture of Maine, but to me, it's a little bit again of the soul and spirit of a place. I have been spending a little time in Amish country, and driving around and looking for those moments that speak to me and kind of define a place. And we were there one time, and it was sort of different weather and started to rain, and I saw this buggy going by, and I just was following him in my car, and he was able. I knew there was going to be a moment when I was going to be able to capture this, and it seemed to stop, and there was a little bit of this light coming through, and the rain, and it just, to me, it spoke visually, and it's to me a simple piece that there's a subject there, and I think I've tried to capture it and eliminated the other information that might take away from the subject matter.
Yeah, it's elegant. All your compositions are just so elegant, and I just said simplified, but not simple doesn't mean easy. What are we looking at now, Tom? What picture is that? Where was this taken?
Again, this is going towards my book, Touching Maine, and I've spent about 10 summers going to Maine. Sandy and I, I did some art shows up, and then we'd spend a week and traveling around to such beautiful places like Monhegan Island. And this is a picture I took. I guess some people would look at it and say, well, there's clothes on a line and, it's those mundane objects. But it really spoke to me, and the way the light was hitting the clothes and the way they were moving in the breeze, and the sort of the little bit of the background and the feeling of an island. And one of the chapters in my book is called, Island Moods, and I have a lot of different images from the islands, but this is one that I really like, and I just like the color and the softness to it. And I do a little bit of work with contrast and trying to lower the contrast, and I think sometimes that helps to accentuate the colors.
Yeah, it almost looks like a watercolor. I mean, it's just got that kind of washy, very soft look to it. Yeah, that's great.
When I do my art shows, sometimes a lot of people come to my booth and they say, "Are these paintings or photographs?" And I'm proud that I'm a photographer, but there is something very beautiful about having that soft feel sometimes, the way some painters do paint. And I ended up writing a little essay that I put up on my booth. Is it painting or photograph? And tried to tell people, what my philosophy is on that.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's fascinating. And then there's some artists, photorealists who try to look like they're photographs. So
yeah, I guess, yeah.
People never happy with what they're doing. I don't know what that.
Yeah.
No, it's.
So, well, and here's another example of some of my work that winter also speaks to me a lot about its peacefulness and its stillness. People run away from winter and go to Florida and places to avoid it, but I do love it. And this was an image I took up in Stowe, Vermont, and it just as I say, less is more. Keep it simple. And again, the light. Some people might look at it and, this kind of a gray tone to it, but I took this picture actually in the sunshine, and it to me, it did not speak to me in the same way as this one did.
All right. I wonder if maybe Sandy, we'll look at more work, but I just wondered if you could do a little pan around the studio to get a sense of the whole space and what goes on.
Sure.
Do you frame your own work? And I see a lot of tools and tape and things. I mean, what goes on there?
Yeah, a little workspace here, and I do all my matting and framing up here. I cut my own glass, and I don't. I order pre-made mitered wooden frames, and I assemble. But I do my matting, I do my framing up here, and underneath I store a lot of my work. I'm running out of space. I put too many things, but it's a wonderful room. It was we put this addition on back in 2004 when I retired from teaching, and we took the roof off the house, and it's just been a wonderful place for me to work and to explore and to do my photography. Over here, this might be a little easier to show. It doesn't have glass on it, perhaps. This is also some work from my Maine project. And this was done in a rather interesting way, using something called a neutral density filter. And that's a filter where you can screw it onto the front of your camera, and you can turn it down, and it lessens the amount of light that can come into your camera. And then you can take these on a tripod, put your camera, you can take these very long exposures. And also I add a little bit of movement by slightly panning slowly for about 4 seconds as I go across. It's a little bit of an experimentation, a trial and error. And but you get some very beautiful, soft, almost impressionistic kind of effects of photographs. And this was taken on the boat dock as we're waiting to leave Monhegan Island, and it just captures so much of the just a feeling of being on the water and the island, and almost like an impressionistic painting.
Yeah, so the book, just to make sure people get the message, where the book is Touching Maine, where can they buy it?
Yeah, the book Touching Maine, I actually have a little website. It's a Squarespace that was created called www.touchingmaine.com. Okay. And on that little Squarespace website is information about the book, and one can actually purchase it through PayPal, etc., online. So I'm very pleased and proud of the book. It's kind of a labor of love. Actually did a lot of it during the COVID time when we were looking for some time to do things. And then I had some help with a friend editing it, and I'm very pleased with how it came out.
Yeah, you want to hold up the book? Maybe Sandy could get a little closer to you, or you closer to Sandy, and just sort of, so the book, I'll fill, we'll show some print. Oh, there you go. Okay.
This is Touching Maine. This is a hardcover book. And kind of start with a picture of our first trip to Maine in, I think, 1952, in an old 1939 Chevrolet with my family, and we stayed up on the rocks in a really rustic cabin with my grandmother. She couldn't, after one night in the cabin, she had to leave. And, it was kind of not her. The book just goes on, and it's divided into lots of chapters about rocks and about water. And I love dinghies and old boats, and a lot of pictures from there. But it takes a lot of time to scout out some of these things. They don't just appear for you. And it takes a lot of work, and you have to be there at the right light. And that's was a labor of love, taking the pictures and being able to put a book together. So
I'm fascinated by the composition of cropping. Could you turn to page, I have a book, so I'm looking at page 39. It's just one example that I want to ask about.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, and try to get, close to that. So it's a boat. So somebody may look at that and go, well, I mean, again, looking at the, if you're reading the Kodak handbook, the subject should be in the middle of the frame. It should be, equidistant, that everything should be perfectly centered. Why, what is the reasoning? What is the artistic approach to cropping like that?
Well, I think one of the things here, Miggs, is that one of the concepts that a lot of photographers use, and I don't think you have to use it all the time, but it's called the thirds.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you put your main focus of your photograph in one of the thirds, whether it be a vertical or a horizontal third, it seems to draw the eye to the subject matter. And having a lot of like negative space also makes for, I think, an interesting photograph. And in this one, I think I was looking for, and I like the idea that, a lot of the boat is sort of hidden, but mostly it's just a reflection that one sees in the water, and a little bit of yellow for the grasses. It all just kind of spoke to me in the visualization process. And, a little bit of work in a digital darkroom to get it just so.
Yeah, no, it makes you focus on it makes you pay attention, the viewer, to pay attention to the reflection. And like, I'm still seeing the boat, and you might say, well, you cut off the boat. Well, no, the whole boat's in the water. It's just, I think it involves the viewer a lot more intimately.
Yeah.
And how about the ones on the opposite page?
Yeah, this was a photo of the three boats and the green boat. They're two different places. One was the green boat was in a place called Friendship, Maine, and the other one, the three boats were in New Harbor. And these are old wooden dinghies that were used by the lobstermen to get to their boats. And I just get up mornings and I wander around these hard scrabble docks and places, and I'm always just looking for these things. And in my brain, I sort of think I'm visualizing what I'd like to find, or sometimes it's just a surprise when you find some of these things. And but you really have to go looking for them, and you have to, I guess, know what you think will visually be an interesting image. And I thought the way these boats are in the water is just kind of nice, the shape and the hard old dock, and the exposure was done in such a way to make the water very blackish and dark, and that way there was nothing distracting from the dinghies.
You also talk about in that book, in your introduction, about that you use all your senses. So somebody may say, wait a minute, you're a photographer, you use your eyes, but you talk about the smell in the air, the smell of the sea, the briny smell, what you're hearing, the sputtering of the lobster boats and all that kind of stuff. So why are all your senses, why would all those senses be important to a photographer who's using primarily your eyes?
Yeah, I think it just, I guess it's like here, this is my chapter about fog. And I get up in the morning, and the seagulls are, barking away, and there's the sound of the lobster boats. There's sirens in the fog, and you can't hear anything. And it's very mystical to me, and it just it sets the mood. Obviously, it's a visual art. There's not sounds coming out of my pictures, but there is something to the senses, and I think the senses all play into helping you to visualize and to take your photographs.
Yeah, I guess it just immerses you in the experience. So there's one more one. We can talk about others, but the other one that I love is page 14.
Sure.
Which.
Yeah, this is a very I'm not really a big lighthouse person. I feel like too many people have done lighthouses, but this was a very famous and beautiful spot in Maine called Pemaquid Point, and there are these unbelievably beautiful rocks that border all over the area. And you get there early in the morning, and if it's a nice gray sort of morning, and the light on the rocks is beautiful. And there's a little tidal pool that's was there from when the tide shifts and little bits of water remain. And so there's a little picture of the lighthouse, and obviously it's upside down because that's the way I photograph it. I sometimes have this picture in my art shows, and people come and they flip it around and say, "Oh, it should be the other way." I said, "No, no, no. This is
It's a reflection. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I love on a lot of your photography. It takes a little bit. I don't know, let's call it work. It takes some engagement in saying, "Wait a minute, I'm looking at, I'm looking at all this hard rock. I don't know what kind of rock it is, if it's glacial or whatever, but shale or whatever. But and then in the middle of this is this peaceful little vignette that's being reflected in the water. I think it's great.
I think that's I sometimes ask myself, and I think a lot of people ask themselves, what's the difference between a photograph and an art, or a photograph and an artistic photograph? And I think it's just trying to look at something and try to make it a little different than, maybe if you were just walking around and on a tour bus and you hopped out and you flipped a picture of a lighthouse and you put it in your pocket and I got a picture. But it just takes time to try to visualize and to try to create something that has a different artistic feel to it.
Yeah. So when they talk about, the photographer has a trained eye, well, how do you train let's say, there's some aspiring photographers listening. How do they train their eye?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, there's just so many kinds of things to photograph. And I think you have to, I think you have to have some knowledge, although today with an iPhone, people don't, I think, know what an f-stop is or what a shutter speed is. They just click away, But aside from that, I just think if you're passionate about something, and whether it's cars or whether it's objects or whatever, and then you try to look at it in a different perspective, and you try to visualize and show it in a different way. I think that's the key to becoming a good photographer. I think it's that visualization and trying to shoot from different angles and different kinds of light, and shooting part of an object, not the whole object, and making it almost like a little bit of a mystery, etc. Yeah,
I found, I think a good place for any photographer to start is one of many places is the New York Times. I mean, sometimes there'll be a picture, there'll be maybe a rally or an event, and the photographer, instead of looking at the person at the podium or, the groundhog or, whatever, they turn the camera around and they catch a face in the crowd, and everyone else is staring at the groundhog, but they just do that little extra thing of, there's more to look at than just where everyone else is pointed. So I think that's what you do, is you look on things that people aren't necessarily focused on, because they're right. They're not.
Yeah, I think that's at least I try to. I mean, it's always hard to be doing something that nobody else has ever done before. But you can always just add your own little touch to it, I think, and that gives it that artistic and creative look to it. I wanted to maybe walk over here for a minute.
Yeah.
I was reading about this artist whose name is Wolf Kahn.
Mm-hmm.
He's a rather famous impressionistic painter who recently died. He was about 92 years old. And he said that in his work, he lived up in Vermont, and maybe 70% of his work was done on his property. I mean, he had a bunch of acres, but there was always something magical and different happening, on his own property. But I don't think that's happening on Wakeman Place here. But my point is, I think here in Westport, we have such a beautiful community. And these are a couple of images. This one here is one of my favorites that I've taken. I call it Winter Peace for Two. And it was taken in Southport. And, to me, it was done in the winter, and these two beautiful chairs that sit there that people sit on and look out of the water during the summertime. But, in the winter with the grayness and the white and the tones, it always just spoke to me. And it's been, I actually use it for my business card but I think Westport and this area just has so much beauty, and you don't have to travel thousands of miles. And the nice thing about doing things locally is you control the light and the weather. You know, you can go on a trip somewhere and have all these great expectations, but if you get terrible light and weather, you're not going to get what you're really looking for. But I can get up in the morning when it's foggy and say, whoa, I'm going down to Campo Beach. I know I'm going to get this particular thing going on. And just one more last one about Westport. It's up on the wall. I know it's a little bit, probably a little reflective, but Old Mill Pond is one of my favorite places. And there are times when that water is like glass, and in the evening light, and you just catch all that magic at one moment. And this piece is called, it's called Evening Bliss. And I just, to me, it's, speaks to me of Westport and this area and how much beauty we have in our backyard.
Well, yeah, thank you. That's a great reminder, because, you know, people travel around the world and they take a picture of, you know, a seagull on a beach, and, you know, and it's in France, but hey, you know, look in your backyard, you know, I mean, maybe that's part of, I mean, these are like textbook photography. These images are really, I think any student of photography could just explore, you know, what you did and the choices you made, and learn a lot. Well, I want to thank you. Our time is up, unless you have a final message or a parting word, or but I want to thank Sandy for being your cinematographer.
Yeah, I'm going to get her. She's going to get a couple of positions.
If Steven Spielberg's watching.
I guess we're always inspired by people, but years ago I went to this wonderful show at the Jewish Museum, and it was the work of a man named Eugene Smith. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of photography during the war in Spain, and during their Civil War and things, and he got injured, and when he never thought he'd take a photograph again, and then somehow his hand healed, and his grandchildren were walking here, and he captured this picture. It just reminds me, it's inspirational of what a beautiful, powerful image can speak to. And,
yeah, again, the simplicity and well, thank you. That's a perfect way to wrap up this.
Okay. Thanks a lot for having me, Miggs and Carol. I really appreciate it. It's an honor, and I hope people will learn a little something about photography and be inspired to do their own.
Yeah. If they watch this, they will. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Miggs. I am feeling very peaceful right about now. I just want to mention again that if you are interested in purchasing Tom's book, Touching Maine, or a photo of his, check out his website, peacefulplacesphoto.com. And to see our catalog of over 40 artist in residences videos, check out the video and podcast section of our website, westportlibrary.org. Thanks, and hope to see you at the library soon.